The Apple Mac Mini M2 is faster and less expensive than its predecessor, enhancing what was already a compelling deal on the best mini PC for most people. You wouldn't know the difference just by looking at it, because the Mac Mini M2 looks nearly identical to the Mac Mini M1 Apple released in 2020. But it's what's on the inside that matters. The Mac Mini M2, like its predecessor, is the first Apple desktop to be upgraded with Apple's latest piece of bespoke silicon, the M2 chip. For the first time, you can upgrade the Mac Mini to the M2 Pro, which is even more powerful. The M2 Pro outperforms the M2 in terms of performance and features, and both run circles around the old M1 chips. After testing and reviewing a new Mac Mini M2 with M2 Pro, I'm confident it's one of the best computers on the market, particularly if you're looking for a desk-friendly powerhouse. The Mac Mini M2 can be ordered from Apple's website for a starting price of $599. The entry-level model is equipped with an M2 chip, an 8-core CPU, a 10-core GPU, 8 GB of memory, and a 256 GB SSD for storage. You can pay more for more memory, storage, a faster Ethernet port, or a more powerful M2 Pro chip if you want more power under the hood. The Mac Mini with M2 Pro starts at $1,299, making the cost of upgrading the chip around $700. At that price, you get more than just the Pro upgrade. The entry-level Mac Mini with M2 Pro is not only more powerful, 10-core CPU, 16-core GPU, but it also has more memory and storage, 16 GB RAM, 512 GB SSD, and more ports than the entry-level Mac Mini. If you want to fully customize a new Mac Mini M2, you can do so with a top-of-the-line M2 Pro chip, 12-core CPU, 19-core GPU, 32 GB of RAM, an 8 TB SSD, and a 10 Gb Ethernet port instead of the standard 1 Gb. All of those upgrades, however, raise the price to $4,499. The design of the Mac Mini M2 appears to be nearly identical to that of the Mac Mini M1, which is fine with me. The low-slung Mac Mini M2 fits easily into all kinds of desk arrangements, measuring 195 by 195 by 35 mm and weighing just under 1.3 kilograms. It also looks good, with rounded corners and a silvery aluminum chassis emblazoned with a large black Apple logo on top. It looks like a metallic Apple icon protruding out of your desk, and I like it. The elevated base, which tapers down from the rounded rectangular chassis to a circular black plastic disc that covers the bottom, makes the Mac Mini M2 appear to float slightly above your desk, just like its predecessor. Don't expect to open the case or upgrade the internals yourself. These machines are designed to be serviced solely by Apple. The Mac Mini M2 has a good selection of ports on the back, and it gets even better if you upgrade to the Mac Mini M2 Pro. The base model includes 2 Thunderbolt for USB 4 ports, 2 USB-A ports, an HDMI out, an Ethernet port, and a 3.5mm audio jack. When you upgrade to the Mac Mini M2 Pro, you get 2 more Thunderbolt 4 ports, for a total of 4. Because of the M2 Pro's increased power, you also get improved external display support. Most people won't notice a difference, but the Mac Mini with M2 Pro can support up to 3 external displays, 2 via Thunderbolt, at up to 6K resolution and 60 Hz refresh rate, and 1 via HDMI, at up to 4K and 60 Hz. The HDMI port can also support one 8K display with a refresh rate of up to 60 Hz or a 4K display with a refresh rate of up to 240 Hz, which is impressive on both counts. The entry-level Mac Mini is no slouch either, with support for up to 2 external displays at the same resolutions, 6K via Thunderbolt 4, 4K via HDMI. The entry-level Mac Mini, however, cannot support an 8K or 240 Hz display, only the M2 Pro model can. I've found the Mac Mini M2, and the upgraded M2 Pro chip inside, to be more than capable of handling just about anything I've thrown at it in my time using it for work and play. I had no problem switching between 30+ tabs in Chrome and Safari while listening to music and playing a game in windowed mode, and apps like Lightroom opened almost instantly. I was also surprised by how much fun I had playing games like Metro Exodus and Resident Evil Village on the upgraded M2 Pro chip, which run better than I expected. I was impressed but not blown away when we first tested Apple's M2 chip in the MacBook Air M2 and the 13-inch MacBook Pro M2. In our performance tests, the M2 chip was significantly faster than the M1, but it was an evolution rather than the revolution I had hoped for after seeing the incredible performance of the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips in Apple's 2021 MacBook Pros. Those upgraded M1 chips are absolute beasts, and they have renewed my faith in Apple Silicon. Now that we've put the Mac Mini with M2 Pro through its paces, I'm happy to report that it's more than powerful enough for everything except serious gaming and demanding content creation. If all you need is a lightning-fast Mac for work, browsing the web, and playing games, the Mac Mini with M2 Pro is more than adequate. When we ran our review unit through the Geekbench 5.4 multi-core CPU benchmark, it scored 15,038. That's good, and it's higher than the M1 Pro chip that scored 12,477 when we tested the 2021 MacBook Pro. It's nearly as good as the 17,229 earned by the 12th Gen Core i9 Intel CPU in a recent Acer Predator Orion 7000 gaming PC we tested, demonstrating that Apple's latest mid-tier Mac chip is catching up to Intel's top-tier CPUs in terms of performance. Of course, the M2 Pro in our Mac Mini review unit can't compete with Intel's latest 13th generation CPUs, which are only now hitting the market. I know this because we recently tested a 13th generation Core i9 CPU in an Origin PC and it scored 24,054 in the same Geekbench 5.4 benchmark. Still, for a Mac Mini, the M2 Pro delivers impressive performance, and in my experience, it can handle multitasking between as many apps and browser tabs as you can throw at it. We didn't stop there, of course. When we put the Mac Mini M2's SSD to the test, we discovered it was faster than almost any other Mac we'd tested. The Mac Mini M2 received a write score of 6,186 and a read score of 5,057 in the Blackmagic disk speed test, which is significantly higher than the original 2020 Mac Mini M1 that scored 2,233 in write and 2,772 in read. It's also significantly faster than the SSDs in the 2022 MacBook Air and Pro, though slightly slower than the SSD in the new 2023 MacBook Pro M2 Pro that scored 6,502 and 5,309. If you're more concerned with how quickly you can crunch video or launch Adobe apps, I've got good news: the Mac Mini with an M2 Pro is plenty fast at both. We timed how long it took our review unit to transcode a 4K video to 1080p using Handbrake, and it finished in 4 minutes and 26 seconds. That's nearly twice the speed of the 2020 Mac Mini with M1 and only slightly faster than the 2021 MacBook Pro with M1 Pro. We installed Puget Bench on our review unit and let it rip to see how it performed in Adobe's suite of apps. This software is designed to assess a PC's performance in the most popular Adobe apps, and the Mac Mini M2 delivered impressive results for its size. Our review unit scored 964 in the Puget Bench Photoshop benchmark and 847 in the Premiere Pro benchmark, which is significantly higher than the Mac Mini M1 score, which struggled to even run the tests, though that may have something to do with the fact that it was the first time we were running them on silicon from Apple instead of Intel or AMD. The M2 Pro chip in our Mac Mini M2 couldn't keep up with the M2 Max chip in the 2023 MacBook Pro we tested, but that's to be expected given that the M2 Max is a more powerful chip and that the MacBook Pro has twice the memory of our Mac Mini M2. Finally, let's talk Mac Mini M2 gaming. Apple's top-tier M2 Pro chip in our review unit has a 12-core CPU and a 19-core GPU, and it's capable of running many of the latest, macOS-compatible, games at solid frame rates with graphics set to medium or higher. Anecdotally, I was able to play older games like Counter-Strike Global Offensive at 1080p with the graphical settings maxed out at 100+ frames per second without issue. I was also able to play Metro Exodus, a relatively new game that can put a strain on your GPU, at 4K on medium settings with an average frame rate of 30 frames per second. I even got it to run at 5K on the Apple Studio display, though even at medium settings, I couldn't get more than 15 to 20 frames per second while playing at such a high resolution. Obviously, this machine isn't designed for gaming, but my hands-on testing indicates that you can play many of the most recent Mac-compatible games at 1080p or higher on the Mac Mini M2, and you can get decent performance from one upgraded with a maxed-out M2 Pro chip and 16GB of memory. After spending some time with the Mac Mini M2, it's easy to recommend it. The base model is faster and less expensive than its predecessor, making it the de facto best choice for anyone looking for a small Mac desktop. Furthermore, the option to upgrade it with an M2 Pro chip, which can transform this PC into a half-decent gaming machine, is a welcome one. It can't compete with the best gaming PCs on the market, but it's much cheaper, smaller, and quieter. The lack of official macOS support for many games is the biggest limitation on the Mac Mini M2's gaming potential. While a Mac Studio with M1 Ultra or an old-school Mac Pro will provide better raw performance, both of these options will cost you several $1,000s more than a fully upgraded Mac Mini M2 Pro. They're excellent PCs for those who require and can afford them, but for the majority of us, the new Mac Mini M2 appears to be a solid deal that provides power and versatility at an affordable price.